Well, good morning. Thank you so much for that incredible conversation, Aviva and Roya. It is remarkable to be here today, especially remarkable to follow a conversation like that with my dear friend and colleague and mentor, DeRionne Pollard. Dr. Pollard is the president of Nevada State College. It has been for I think coming up on 2 years, about a year and a half now. And we got to work together, had the pleasure of working together when in my previous role at the Nevada System of Higher Education. And I've since benefited tremendously from our friendship going forward and the expressions of her mentorship as we've continued to try to better understand and better serve the people of the state of Nevada. Welcome, DeRionne, and thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Caleb. Delighted to be here. I'm still trying to figure out how I became a mentor, but I'm going to say, as Cornel West said of Bell Hooks, you are a friend of mine.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And you didn't have a choice in it. It just happened by virtue of your leadership and presence. So thank you for being here today. You've been here for about a year and a half now, and seen a lot of the things that we do and how we do things here in Nevada, good, bad, or indifferent. And I'd like to start by just asking you to tell us a little bit about who you are and your journey to Nevada and how you came to be here.
So I'm a little Black girl from the South Side of Chicago. I grew up in public education, had the privilege of being the first in my family to complete college and live a life that's bigger than the one that I thought possible. Grew up in poverty, understand the potency of higher education, and more importantly, accepted a calling to serve organizations through leadership. And if I do it very well, I've made a life dedicated to institutions that privilege access. They believe that higher education has both the potential and promise to deliver on something that our country needs now more than ever. So by way of a lot of routes, I've ended up in Nevada. I love watching the guest here participants log in. I spent most recently 11 years as president of Montgomery College in Maryland. Prior to that, I did a stint in California as a campus president, wonderful institution. But at the end of the day, I think all this sass and a little bit of this attitude comes from the fact that I'm a proud girl of the 7-9 in Chicago.
Thank you for bringing it to Nevada. Tell us, you talked about institutions that privilege access and your attraction to those and how you've come to lead those institutions. Tell us about your special role and what's unique at Nevada State College.
So there's this interesting thing that to me, a lot of people ask me what drew me to Nevada State. And as I laid in bed, literally on a Saturday morning, a girlfriend called me and said, "Hey, have you seen this job?" And I thought, I just scanned it and I looked at it and I said, "Oh, you're going to apply?" And she said, "Nope, I think you should." And I was kind of shocked by that because I had a very good job doing important work. In 26 years, I had been at that point in the community college space. And she said, "Look at this institution." And I went to look at the website and it was engrossed for about 3 to 4 hours, really understanding Nevada State College. And here are some of the things that I took away, what resonated with me. First of all, very important in this, that it was a new institution of higher education in the landscape of Nevada. For all intentional purposes, Nevada had 7 institutions, 4 community colleges, 1 research institution, 2 R1s, and they decided to create a state college with the idea that we know that many of the graduates who attend this institution would live and contribute locally, and probably most importantly, they'd have the opportunity to help really build an educated populace, a middle class in Nevada. So I accepted the mantle because one of the things that resonated in all the materials about Nevada State was this unapologetic commitment to 2 things. 1, social justice, and secondly, populations who've traditionally been underserved in higher education. So if we look at the demography of Southern Nevada, we look at the demography of Nevada State College, the majority of my students are students of color, The majority of them are over the age of 24. The majority of them, nearly half, are first-generation college students. And even more provocatively, 70% or more of my students are women, because two of our major areas of study are in nursing and teaching. So for me, this was almost a liberatory act of myself to step in and say, can I take some of the guts and the savvy of what community colleges do, take it to an institution that had a task that almost seems overwhelming, to help raise the educational standards in a community that oftentimes has been misunderstood and mischaracterized, and then to do that in a space where we're offering both undergraduate and graduate program. For me, I thought that it was a response to what I would think is part of the calling of my life.
One of the first meetings, I think it might have been the first meeting I was at, where I heard you present, you used the phrase the new majority in your discussions with the board here. And that was one of the things that piqued my interest, and was something that I think, well, I know because we've talked about it many times since, but it's been one of the things that's central to your service here in the state of Nevada. What's the significance of that concept, and what does it mean to your work at Nevada State?
You know, interestingly, there's these old tropes that play in our minds, both conscious and unconscious, of who attends college. And depending on where you get your news from, depending on what you read and where you live, there are these old ideas of who's in college. Typically, they'll say that he or she is a certain age. He is first generation. He's not first generation. He's a multi-generation. His parents are sending him to school. He's going to have an internship identified by some person that his father may have seen on the golf course. They're going to send him care packages. He's going to pledge a fraternity. He's going to do all these things. And that's who we think the image is, this old trope of who's in college. To be quite frank, that's not who's in college right now. Half of undergraduates in this country look like the students at Nevada State, students of color, first generation, immigrants, dreamers, returning adults trying to figure out what they're doing, working parents. That's who is actually in college right now. And the American Associations of Higher Education have deemed these the new majority, because the reality is that no one talks about them, but they are indeed the students who are in higher education right now. So for me, I think what Nevada State does and what institutions of higher education are charged to do is to amplify these experiences and speak truth to power. If you think that who's going to college is a privileged 18-year-old white young man, that certainly doesn't help you when you think about who's actually in college, and understanding that the number one barrier to college is not privilege, it is poverty. To understand that the new majority has a different way of conceiving and needing education, and more importantly, institutions will have to rise up differently to support them. You've heard me say this, I grew up in Chicago, and people often talk about intersections and intersectionality. So I grew up on 79th and Wood, and that's kind of like a code. Different places you go, you talk about this. It's all about these intersections. Nevada State sits in an intersection. It is the ideal versus the real, one of these very, very, very real narratives in literature. So for me, I think a lot about Nevada State as being the real right now. It is where we are abiding in higher education, and the opportunity for me to lead this organization has been, I think, again, part of the calling of my life.
Well, I know I'm not alone, and one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation was because of the passion and context that you bring to this conversation, and I think we just saw it there in that answer. So, but unfortunately, we need to go ahead and wrap this up here and hand it off to the next group. So, DeRionne, Dr. Pollard, President Pollard, thank you. Appreciate your friendship, and thank you so much for being here today. With that, I'll go ahead and say thank you to our friends at Aspen, and turn it over to my dear friend in New Orleans, Louisiana, Will Snowden, for his interview.